My sister accused me of stealing $110,000 from her wedding and turned the whole family against me, until one shocking reveal flipped all on its head. The wedding had been a spectacle of joy, a day bathed in golden light and laughter. My sister, Elizabeth, was a vision in her designer gown, the fabric shimmering as she moved, catching every eye in the room. Brian, her groom, now her husband, stood beside her, his face glowing with a happiness so pure it seemed almost otherworldly. The ceremony unfolded flawlessly. Heartfelt vows, clinking champagne glasses, and a dance floor alive with celebration. If there was any undercurrent of tension, I didn't notice it. Not then. Not amid the music and the smiles. The weight of what was to come didn't hit me until the night after, when everything I thought I knew about my family unraveled. We gathered at my parents' house the next evening, a cozy tradition to decompress after the whirlwind of the wedding. The living room was warm, filled with the soft glow of lamps and the familiar clutter of family life, photo frames on the mantel, a worn throw blanket draped over the couch. We were sprawled across the furniture, sipping coffee and chuckling over memories of the reception. Someone brought up Uncle Ted's awkward dance moves, and the room erupted in laughter. I was mid-sentence, recounting how I'd nearly tripped over a table during the cha-cha slide, when Elizabeth stood up. The air shifted. Her face was pale, her lips trembling, and her eyes burned with something I couldn't place, anger, grief, or both. "John stole our honeymoon money," she announced, her voice sharp and quivering, slicing through the warmth of the room like a blade. $11,000. It's gone. The words hit me like a physical blow, knocking the breath from my lungs. The room fell into a suffocating silence. I felt the weight of every gaze, my parents, my aunts, my cousins, all turning to me, their eyes heavy with accusation. My mind scrambled to make sense of it. Stole? Me? The idea was so absurd it bordered on surreal. I opened my mouth to protest, but no words came. My tongue felt heavy, useless, as if I'd forgotten how to speak. Elizabeth didn't give me a chance to recover. She launched into a tirade, her voice rising with every word. She spoke of her devastation, how she'd spent the day sobbing, how the betrayal cut deeper because it came from her own brother. Her hands gestured wildly, her face contorted with pain. "How could you, John?" she cried. "That was our dream, our honeymoon, our future. You took it from us." Brian sat beside her, his face a mask of shock, his eyes wide and unblinking, as if he'd been struck by a freight train. He didn't move, didn't speak, just stared at the floor, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. My parents, always quick to rally behind Elizabeth, didn't hesitate. My mother's voice was low, laced with disappointment. "John, how could you do this to your sister? To your own family?" Her words stung, each one a needle piercing deeper into my chest. My father, usually the quieter of the two, was even harsher. "You've ruined everything," he said, his voice cold and final. "Stealing from Elizabeth? You're not welcome here anymore. You're no longer part of this family." The room seemed to tilt. I tried to defend myself, my voice shaking but firm. "I didn't take anything," I said, looking from one face to another, searching for an ally. "I was at the front desk all night helping with the guests. Everyone saw me. I didn't even know where the money was kept." I turned to Brian, hoping for support. To his credit, he looked uncertain, his brow furrowed as he met my gaze. "I don't think John would do something like that," he said softly, almost to himself. His words were a lifeline, a flicker of hope in the storm. But Elizabeth wasn't having it. She whirled on him, her eyes flashing with fury. "Stop defending him, Brian," she snapped. "He's lying, and you're taking his side over mine? John, you're disgusting. Get out of my sight." Her words were venomous, each one dripping with a hatred I hadn't known she was capable of. It wasn't just about the money. This was personal, a grudge that ran deeper than I'd realized. My parents echoed her, their voices a chorus of condemnation. "You are no longer our son," my father said, his tone final, like a judge delivering a sentence. My mother's eyes were wet with tears, but she didn't look at me. I glanced at Brian one last time, his expression a mix of confusion and helplessness, and then I turned and walked out. The door clicked shut behind me, a sound that felt like the end of something I couldn't name. As I drove away, the night air cool against my face, the pieces began to fall into place. The accusation wasn't about the money, not really. It was about our grandmother. Months earlier, Grandma had confided in me that she planned to leave me the bulk of her inheritance. She believed I would honor the family legacy, use the money wisely, and care for what she'd built over decades. Elizabeth, who had always seen herself as the golden child, the one destined for greatness, was livid when she found out. She'd tried to sway Grandma, painting herself as the more deserving heir. But Grandma hadn't budged. Now, with Grandma's health declining, Elizabeth was running out of time. This accusation was her move, a calculated strike to paint me as the villain, to turn the family against me and secure her place as the favored one. The realization settled over me like a cold fog. I was angry, yes, but there was something else too, a clarity, a resolve. If Elizabeth wanted to play dirty, I could match her. I'd been holding on to a secret, one I'd kept to protect Brian, to spare him pain. Elizabeth had been cheating on him for months. I'd stumbled across the truth by accident. Text messages on her phone, late-night calls she thought no one noticed. I hadn't wanted to ruin their marriage, hadn't wanted to be the one to break Brian's heart. But after tonight, after her lies and the way she'd turned our family against me, all bets were off. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my knuckles white. The road stretched out before me, dark and empty, but my mind was alive with possibilities. I could expose her, let the truth about her infidelity tear her perfect image apart. I could confront her privately, use the secret as leverage to clear my name, or I could be patient, gather evidence and strike when the time was right. The thought of revenge was intoxicating, a fire in my chest that burned away the hurt and betrayal. Elizabeth had started this war, but I would finish it. As I drove into the night, I felt a strange calm settle over me. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I would find a way to clear my name, to expose her lies, and to reclaim my place in the family. And when I did, Elizabeth would learn what it meant to cross me. After that night, I couldn't stop thinking about what Elizabeth had done. The betrayal hurt, but what hurt even more was the fact that my parents believed her without a second thought. I couldn't even look at my phone because the family group chat exploded with texts about how I had let everyone down and how ashamed they were of me. It was as if Elizabeth had flipped a switch, and suddenly I was the family villain. But I wasn't going to let her win. Elizabeth thought she could destroy me and walk away unscathed. What she didn't know was that I had been sitting on a bombshell for months. Back in August, I'd accidentally caught her with someone who wasn't Brian. I'd gone to a coffee shop in the next town to meet a friend, and there she was, sitting in a corner booth, holding hands with some guy I didn't recognize. They weren't exactly subtle, kissing, laughing, acting like a full-fledged couple. I didn't say anything at the time because, honestly, it wasn't any of my business. I figured it would come back to bite her eventually. I just never expected it to be me who'd have to bite back. Now I needed proof. Something solid, something undeniable. I knew her routine well enough. She'd always claimed she was visiting a friend or running errands when she disappeared for a few hours each week. It didn't take a genius to figure out what she was really doing. My best guess was Thursday, around 7 o'clock in the evening. That seemed to be her usual window. So I parked my car down the street from her house and waited. Sure enough, just after 6:45, Elizabeth walked out, got into her car, and drove away. I followed her, keeping a good distance so she wouldn't notice. She went to the same coffee shop where I'd seen her before. The guy was waiting for her in the parking lot. I parked discreetly across the street and started recording. They hugged, then they kissed. Not a quick peck, but the kind of kiss that made it clear Brian wasn't even a thought in her head. They went inside and sat by the window, looking like a couple on a romantic date. The guy kept leaning in close, touching her arm, whispering in her ear. Elizabeth ate it up. I recorded the whole thing, 7 minutes of golden footage that would turn the whole situation on its head. When they finally left, I made sure to catch them hugging again before they got into separate cars and drove away. I waited until she was long gone before I drove home. My heart was pounding all the way, but it wasn't nerves, it was anticipation. I knew I had something that would shatter her perfect little facade. I wasn't going to rush into it. I had to wait for the right moment. Elizabeth had gone nuclear on me at a family gathering, so it was only fitting that I returned the favor. I decided to set up a dinner a few days later and pretend to apologize to make amends. My parents, still angry with me, reluctantly agreed. Elizabeth didn't hesitate to accept, probably thinking it would be her chance to humiliate me further. Little did she know what was coming. The days leading up to the dinner were excruciating. I stayed completely quiet, even as Elizabeth continued to throw barbs in the family group chat about how some people can't take responsibility for their actions. My parents ate it up, of course. Every time I saw a text pop up from them saying something like, "We're so proud of you, Elizabeth, for handling this with grace," I wanted to scream. But I kept my cool. I knew it would be worth it. The morning of the dinner, I texted everyone in the family group chat, including Brian. I said I wanted to meet for dinner and clear the air. "I owe everyone an explanation," I wrote. and I need to apologize especially to you, Brian." My mother replied first, saying they'd be there but that I'd better have a good reason for what I'd done. Elizabeth chimed in with a sarcastic remark about how she hoped I was ready to confess. Brian's response was short and neutral, just a thumbs-up emoji. Perfect. Everything was falling into place. I spent the day getting ready. I loaded the video onto my laptop and tested it to make sure the quality was good. I also printed out screenshots, just in case anyone tried to accuse me of faking the footage. When I arrived at my parents' house for dinner, I felt like I was going into a battle, and I was ready to win. The atmosphere was tense as I walked in. My parents barely acknowledged me, and Elizabeth sat at the head of the table looking smug as ever. Brian was next to her, quiet and reserved, as he had been since the accusation. I didn't know if he believed I had stolen the money or not, but he was clearly keeping his thoughts to himself. We all sat down, and I began by taking a deep breath. First of all, I want to say that I'm sorry for how things turned out. I know you're all angry with me, and I understand why. But I've been thinking about everything that's happened, and I realize there's something I should have said sooner. Something I've been holding back. Elizabeth leaned forward slightly, her eyes bright with anticipation. She probably thought I was going to confess. My mom and dad just stared, waiting. Brian looked uncomfortable. I pulled out my laptop, put it on the table, and opened the video file. "What you're about to see is not easy to watch," I said, "but I think it's important for everyone here to know the truth." Elizabeth's smug expression faltered for the first time as I pressed play. The room fell silent as the video began. It showed her walking up to the guy in the coffee shop parking lot, hugging him, kissing him. The date in the coffee shop, the way they couldn't keep their hands off each other, and then the last shot, them hugging again in the parking lot before they drove away. The video ended, and for a few seconds no one said a word. Then Brian spoke. "Who the hell is that?" he asked, his voice sharp. Elizabeth's face flushed. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. "Answer him," I said. "You accused me of stealing $11,000 to make me look bad, when all along you were the one who was lying. This isn't your friend, is it? How long has this been going on?" Elizabeth stammered, but Brian didn't wait for her to answer. He pushed back his chair and stood up, his face a mixture of anger and disbelief. "You've been cheating on me," he said. "The whole time I was working my ass off to give you the life you wanted, the Maldives, the car, all of it, for this?" My parents looked like they'd been hit by a truck. My mother turned to Elizabeth, her voice shaking. "Elizabeth, is this true?" Elizabeth finally managed to speak. "It's not what it looks like," she said, but no one believed her. "This will be a lesson to you, Elizabeth," I said, standing up. "You started this war. All I did was finish it." Brian grabbed his keys and left without another word. My parents, still in shock, turned on me. "How could you do this to her?" my father said. "Me?" I shot back. "She accused me of stealing $11,000 to make me look bad, and I'm the bad guy for showing the truth? You should ask her how far she's willing to go to cover up her lies." I didn't wait for an answer. I grabbed my stuff and left. I wasn't sticking around to hear any more excuses. They wanted a villain, and now they had one, but this time it wasn't me. After the dinner, I didn't hear from anyone in my family for days. No texts, no phone calls, no attempts to explain or apologize. It was radio silence. I figured they were probably trying to clean up the mess Elizabeth had made. The first person to reach out wasn't even family, it was Brian. He called me 2 days after the dinner, and frankly, I was surprised he wanted to talk. I thought he might be mad at me for blindsiding him like that, but he didn't sound mad at all. "I just wanted to say thank you," he said, "for being honest. I wish it hadn't come to this, but I'm glad I know." We talked for a while, and he told me he'd already started making arrangements to move out of the house he shared with Elizabeth. He also mentioned that he'd canceled their trip to the Maldives and stopped making payments on the car he'd promised to buy her. "She can figure out her own life now," he said. I asked him if Elizabeth had tried to talk to him since the dinner. "She's been blowing up my phone, begging me to understand," he said. "But there's nothing to understand. She cheated. End of story." Hearing him say that gave me a strange sense of closure. At least someone in this whole mess was seeing things clearly. A few days later, my mom finally contacted me. She sent me a long, guilty text message about how disappointed she was in me for ruining Elizabeth's relationship and how families should always support each other, no matter what. I stared at the message for a while, trying to decide if it was even worth responding to. In the end, I sent back a short reply. Family supports each other by telling the truth, not by covering up lies. Maybe you should think about that. That didn't go over well. My dad followed up with a message telling me I was being immature and that Elizabeth was still their little girl, no matter what she'd done. It was ridiculous. They were willing to overlook her cheating and manipulation just because she was their favorite. Meanwhile, Elizabeth remained silent, not a word from her. I didn't know if she was too ashamed to speak or if she was planning her next move, but either way, I didn't care. She'd lost her fiancé, her free trip to the Maldives, and probably most of the sympathy she'd soaked up from my parents. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Elizabeth wasn't the type to admit defeat. If she was quiet, it was because she was plotting, and I wasn't wrong. A week later, she made her move. I woke up one morning to a barrage of texts from mutual friends and extended family. Apparently, Elizabeth had begun to spread a new story, that I had set her up to ruin her wedding and sabotage her relationship. She claimed that I had been following her for weeks trying to catch her slipping, and that the video was just a desperate attempt to get back at her for exposing the alleged theft. It was absurd, but the damage was done. Some people bought her story, especially those who didn't know the whole context. They started texting me, calling me petty and vindictive. Others, thankfully, saw through her lies and told me they believed me. I wasn't going to sit back and let her control the narrative. I had all the evidence, the video, the screenshots, the texts. If she wanted a public fight, I was ready. But before I could make a move, something unexpected happened. Brian stepped in. He posted a long message on social media that addressed everything. He explained the cheating, the accusations, the dinner, and even my role in exposing the truth. John didn't ruin our relationship, he wrote. Elizabeth did that all by herself. He just showed me what I needed to see. If anyone has a problem with him, take it up with me. The post went viral among our circle of friends and family. It shut down most of Elizabeth's supporters overnight. People started reaching out to me, apologizing for jumping to conclusions. Even my parents went quiet for a while, probably realizing how bad they looked by taking her side so blindly. But Elizabeth? She doubled down. Her next move was as bold as it was stupid. She tried to sue me for slander. Yes, you read that right. She actually hired a lawyer and filed a lawsuit claiming that I had intentionally destroyed her reputation and caused her emotional distress. When I was served with the papers, I couldn't decide whether to laugh or get angry. She wasn't just desperate, she was delusional. I didn't waste any time. I hired my own lawyer, showed them the video, the texts, and Brian's social media posts, and they immediately said I had nothing to worry about. This is a scare tactic, they told me, but if she wants to go to court, we'll go to court. And so we did. The court date was about a month later. Most of the family showed up, probably out of morbid curiosity. Brian was there too, sitting quietly in the back. Elizabeth arrived with her lawyer, looking smug and confident, as if she'd already won. The judge wasn't impressed. Her lawyer argued that I had maliciously recorded and distributed private footage of Elizabeth, causing her to lose her relationship and social standing. But my lawyer immediately shut that down. They pointed out that the footage was taken in a public place and showed behavior that directly contradicted Elizabeth's previous accusations against me. They also pointed out that I'd only shown the video to our immediate family until Elizabeth's lies forced the situation into the public eye. Then came the best part. Brian took the stand. He testified that Elizabeth had accused me of stealing without evidence and tried to alienate me from the family. He confirmed that the video was the only reason he'd learned the truth about her cheating. John didn't ruin anything, he said. He saved me from wasting my life on someone who didn't respect me or our relationship. Elizabeth's lawyer tried to cross-examine him, but Brian didn't flinch. He stuck to the facts and left no room for interpretation. When it was Elizabeth's turn to testify, her story completely fell apart. She contradicted herself several times, claiming at one point that the man in the video was just a friend and at another point that she and Brian were on a break when it happened. The judge wasn't buying any of it. By the end of the hearing, it was clear where things were headed. The judge dismissed the case, ruling that I hadn't defamed Elizabeth and that the evidence I had presented was both truthful and relevant. But the real kicker came when the judge scolded Elizabeth directly. "You have wasted this court's time with baseless accusations," she said. "It is clear that this lawsuit was an attempt to deflect blame for your own actions. I urge you to reflect on the decisions that led you here today." Elizabeth left the courtroom in tears. After that, the tables were turned. No one, not my parents, not our extended family, not even her closest friends, would have anything to do with her lies. Brian cut off all contact and completed the process of moving out. My parents, humiliated and ashamed, finally admitted they'd been wrong to take her side. It wasn't a dramatic apology. Just a quiet acknowledgement when my father called me one night and said, "We made a mistake. I hope one day you can forgive us." I told him I'd think about it, and I meant it. Forgiveness wasn't going to be easy after everything they put me through. As for Elizabeth, she completely disappeared from the family scene. She moved out of state a few weeks later, claiming she needed a fresh start. From what I've heard, she struggled to keep friends or a job ever since. Her reputation followed her, as it should have. I won't pretend that this whole ordeal hasn't left scars. It has. But in the end, the truth prevailed, and I was finally free of the cloud Elizabeth had tried to hang over me. I don't regret exposing her. She started the war, and she paid the price.